Yes. And I think that's a big part of it too. And I've actually rarely been asked what my downloads are. I think, I don't know why. Maybe it's just because the sheer volume of episodes I have out there. People just see the names, or maybe they click, or maybe some people probably don't even look. They probably just like, oh, here's the topics. I'm cool. Yes, I'll do an interview. And it really is interesting. And I think people just you get in your head. This person's never going to want to talk to me. My podcast is too small. I see it all the time. I'm like, well, just imagine that you have thousands and tens of thousands of listeners per episode, right? I don't know. Like, stop, get out of your head a little bit. Act as if your podcast is bigger than it is, and or be professional too. So, yeah, that's a big thing, man. It's just ask. Like, how many times as an entrepreneur do you hear no? All the time, right? That should be a muscle that you should be able to train pretty well, so it's like it doesn't bother you anymore. And that's something else that podcast trains.
Well, welcome everybody back to the Full Battery Media Podcast. This is Sean Trace. I'm your host, and I've got an awesome guest with me today. And would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. My name's Eric Malzone, and who I am. That's like a deep existential question, right?
First thing in the morning too, right?
Yeah, right. Ooh, who am I? Why am I here? What's the point of it all? So I currently live in Whitefish, Montana. Let's start with that. I was born and raised in Northern California before the Silicon Valley was the Silicon Valley. And, I got into sports pretty early. So I was a competitive swimmer at age 5. Actually started burning out on that by age 10. And then luckily I found the sport of water polo, which I know isn't very popular in other parts of the world, but it's a big deal in that region of the country. And I really enjoyed it, and I grew into it. I played it for a very long time. Got me through college and into club after college. And, after college, I went into the corporate world, did about 9-10 years of corporate sales and, marketing and business development and things like that. That's okay. And realized it wasn't really for me, So when the opportunity arose, I got a text message from an old college teammate. Just, hey man, do you want to open a gym? And that was around 2008. I just started doing CrossFit, and I was like, it was happy hour. I remember it was Friday. So I went and had a beer. And I was like, and this is T9 texting back then, Sean. I think you're old enough to remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah. So I wrote back, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Right. It was like, and that was kind of it. That was my entry into the fitness industry. So 6 months later, we had opened our gym in Santa Barbara, California. Obviously there's a lot more to the story leading up to that, but ran that gym for about 8 or 9 years, opened another one in 2015. And then due to multiple reasons, decided it was time to sell in 2017. And my wife and I sold them, successfully moved on. And my wife and I went nomadic for about a year and ended up here in Montana. But after selling the gyms, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I started doing some business coaching for other gyms and things like that. And my colleague at the time was like, you should start a podcast. I'm like, what's a podcast? Right? What is that? I mean, what do you mean? I looked at it, I'm like, actually, this isn't that hard. This is pretty simple. I can do it with a laptop. I can do it, if I have a decent microphone, I can travel, and I can record, and, I can meet all these people this way. So it was really just out of curiosity of what was coming next in the industry. And so that podcast is called The Future of Fitness. I've done it now this is my 9th year, over 500 interviews. I also have spun off a couple other podcasts, Fitness Blitz Radio. I do co-host Athletech Unscripted. And I do, like you, I do a lot of media projects, specifically to business and industry focused ones for fitness, health, and wellness. And I think to this day, I don't even know, man, I've stopped counting. It's about 1,000 interviews awesome. That I've done. And, I've got to interview some really incredible people, from executives to, Fortune 500 companies to some of the leading minds in health sciences, like Dr. Stacey Sims and Andy Galpin, and you name it. And also a lot of founders and startups and things like that in the technology space. So it's been a really cool journey. I also have a podcast media placement agency that I work with, and I do some consulting for different brands across the industry. So it's afforded me, it wasn't always easy, to keep the content going and believing that it's actually going somewhere.
Right.
But I can say
Right.
now that I'm pretty happy with the way things are turning now. I'm really excited for the direction in 2026. So yeah, it's been a wild journey, man. I think you would probably agree that podcasting really is best described as a journey. You just have you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
You just kind of keep doing it, and eventually you end up at some pretty cool, weird places. But yeah, that's the summary, man. That's my backstory.
I love that. And actually, I do love that you describe it as a journey, because when you start out, like any type of journey, you start something out, you're like, well, I don't know where this is going to go. And everyone's asking you, what do you want it to become? And you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what this can evolve into. And yet, I remember one of my favorite things is I got into university and I had this rock star professor, Dr. Andrew Wheat. And we would always roll over to his house and he would talk to us. We just talked about philosophy and books and knowledge and all this good stuff. But we would stay up till like 3 a.m. having tea and talking about philosophy and life and all this. It just was the coolest dude, man. And like,
That
it was
sounds
just
great.
this place where all these students would come together. And those conversations, I just remembered like early on, when I started watching podcasts, and I was like, dude, I wish I could have a podcast that was like that. Just going back and having those conversations. Like, we talked about anything and everything. And it was beautiful for that, because it was the most transformative time of my life. And, and yet now we're able to have conversations like, dude, I'm in Vietnam, you're in Montana, and we're having this conversation virtually. Like, how awesome is that? It's wild.
Yeah, it's
and
wild.
We're able to share it with people out there that are able to tune in. And like, one of the things too, on the Full Battery Media podcast, I started a media company, and yet I was also a university professor teaching content creation, and I was teaching students, and like, I was just like, the most fun thing for me is to be able to help people sit there and go, how can I do that? And like, yeah, you can. And your voice is important, and like, people need to be hearing your perspective. People need to be sharing that diverse perspectives, and for me, like, it gave me a place. I used to teach, kids as well. And I remember letters that students gave to me that said, you were one of the most impactful people in my life. And I just was like blown away by that. And I just sat there and I kept thinking, how can I teach at a larger scale? How can I start putting out content that can reach more people and can maybe reach people that don't have the money to come to one of my classes, that don't have the money to go to the school that I'm teaching at, And that's where when I found podcasting, I was like, dude, this is rad. Like, you mean I just get to just record stuff and awesome conversations, we get to share it? And they're like, yeah, that's pretty much it. And I was just like, dude, yeah, I'm in. I'm hooked.
Yeah. And you can talk about whatever you want. It's your podcast, right?
Yep.
Like, people will say, well, I don't know. I don't feel like that fits my content. And I'm like, well, dude, talk about whatever you want. There's no one going to tell you no, right? It's incredibly freeing. And yeah, it's been like I said, in my 9th year now, which is pretty wild, the people I've met along the way,
right?
The relationships, and I think there's so many benefits, and maybe we can talk about that too. Like, the benefits of podcasting are so numerous.
Yes.
But people are so linear in their thought pattern. They're like, well, I need to get some great content. I need to build the audience, and maybe I'll create some social media around it. But like, yes, like that's definitely part of it, but like, you're forgetting about all the other stuff, like educational opportunities, the network extensions, like the introductions, the authority that you build in a space, all this stuff, and the enjoyment of the process, dude. Like, I think my favorite thing about doing a podcast is that for this next, whatever we're doing, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, my phone's away, my email's non-existent. Right. I just have some questions that you sent. That's it. My door's closed. Like, this is it. I'm focused on Sean. Like, that's it. And how often does that happen anymore?
It doesn't, dude.
Never.
Yeah.
So
it's like,
man.
I live in a city that is predominantly dominated by motorcycles. And the number of times that I see people texting while driving a motorcycle in traffic, it's mind-blowing. And I'm just like, well, people are so amazingly distracted these days.
Yeah.
And we have to change that, And one of the things too is, like, I love the fact that you can find something and just dive in, and there's conversations for everyone out there. But one of the things that you tapped on there, and I want to poke at that a little bit, because I totally agree, is when I have people come to me and they want to start doing content, because that's what me and my team do. And I'll sit there, they're like, do I do long form? Do I do talking head? Do I do podcasts? And I was like, they all do different things. They all have different things. And you don't have to pick one and just say, I am the short form guy. I am this. You could take a podcast, record it, then repurpose the reels and do fun things with it. There's a lot of different ways you do it. But like for me, one of the things that I've absolutely loved is that the networking that's come about through my podcast has been second to none. It's like, if you call and you're cold calling a bunch of people, and you're like, hey, I'm here I want to sell you this, dude, you're going to get shut down. But if you just come in and say, can we talk about you? And I mean, maybe you're not selling anything, but you just want to get in the room with someone that you'd like to get in the room with, and you sit there and go, maybe you want to be I don't know, like a zookeeper, right? But you don't know how to break into that arena. So you start the Zookeeper podcast where you talk to the best zookeepers in the world. And then suddenly you have the 10, 20, 50, 100 best zookeepers who know who you are. And, suddenly you're able to get a really cool job as a zookeeper at a top zoo because that's the thing that you put your energy into.
It's one of the most underrated values of podcasting in an interview format, obviously, right? It's if you're interviewing. When I sold my gyms as a gym operator, especially like I was doing CrossFit style gyms, which is, it's hard work, man. It's not a super lucrative business. But it takes a lot of, and I hate this term, passion. It takes a lot of love, I guess, to do it because you're in there 6 days a week. You're dealing with, even when you think things are about to hit cruise control, you're like, okay, I got this. This business is solved. Something happens, right? Like, I call them parking lot problems. Like, someone, I don't know, like your neighbor's pissed at you, whatever it is. But, the whole time I was like, I'm so stuck in operations here, but I feel like I can play a bigger role. Everything I've learned here, I feel like I can play a bigger role in our industry. And that's really like, I don't say that very often out loud, but that's really the selfish reason I started the podcast, because I wanted to build my network. I'm like, I want to be next to the executive, the founder of F45, or like these are the people I got to interview. And as it kept building and building and building, all of a sudden, like you're also, if Sean, if you interview, I don't know, okay, let's use a zookeeper. If you interview the best zookeeper in the world, right? And you're on the same screen or same, digital stage with them on a podcast, people associate you with that person now. Yeah. Like it's a really interesting thing. And now all of a sudden, like you're kind of not on their level, but you're close. And so there's a lot of weird things that happen that are really interesting with that. But I think that is the most underrated. You can't, like the CEO of F45 would never have talked to me if I wasn't a podcast guy, because you're offering an interview. Everyone loves to be interviewed.
Everyone loves to be interviewed. This is so true.
Right? I mean, you reach out to me, I'm like, sure.
45 minutes to talk about myself. I don't mind if I do.
You're borrowing someone else's platform. So there's a lot of reasons to it. Would he have ever taken my call other than that? No. And would I have ever had dinner with him at an event? No. Right? Yeah. Would I ever, I can text him now. Like what? Like that's wild. And it's because of podcasting. And I hope we're not spilling the beans on like why everyone should start a podcast, because this is pretty motivating, I think, if you're a motivated person, to get one going. And I was in a mastermind group, the Wellness Growth Mastermind, run by Brian Von Aken. We have a subset of podcasters that are about 25 of us in this group. And a woman in there was saying, she's like, I'm thinking about hanging it up. She's like, I've been doing this for a few years. She's like, I know I'm a really effing good podcast host, but I'm just not seeing the growth. And I had to stop her. I'm like, yeah, but you're a B2B consultant, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what you do. You consult other businesses. I'm like, don't you see? Like this,
it's not about the numbers.
It's not about the audience.
It's not about the audience.
It's about the doors.
Yep. And I'm gonna say this a little selfishly. Like, I started a wine podcast, and everyone's like, dude, why did you start a wine podcast? I'm from the Napa Valley. I was talking to some of my friends, and they were talking about the ad spend in the Napa Valley and for media. And I have a media company that is split between California and Vietnam. I have talent in Vietnam that work with me here, and I've got the company set up in the States. And I was just like, there's a lot of money up that area, and there's not a lot of people doing this. And so I was like, all right, we're going to talk about wine. And, it's kind of the Every Dude's Kind of Wine podcast. We had a great one the other day of wine pairings with asshole relatives and neighbors that you have to deal with for Thanksgiving. And we talked about like all of the weird people that you're going to see at Thanksgiving dinner, like the conspiracy theorists, the why are you still fat? Like your cousin's more successful than you. And what's the wine that you want to pair with that? It was a hilarious episode. And we don't have a ton of listeners and subscribers, but I'll tell you who is watching: people in that industry. Because the people that are like watching it are like people that are in that circle. And like right there, like I'm already kind of making my inroads. And like when you're 100 episodes deep, then, you've got 100 people that are in your network,
Yeah.
One of the things that I lived when I moved to Southeast Asia, one of the things that really struck me was the social structure. And my wife talks to me about this all the time. I had a problem with some neighbors. Our neighbors were doing karaoke and really, really loud. And it was just a thing that they do. And I went out and I was like, cut the music, man. Cut the music. It's too loud. I was doing this, which I know means cut. They thought I was doing this. And it started some drama with our neighbors who got all crazy, tried to storm over and start a fight. And the next day, my wife's uncle had to show up, who's got connections like crazy. And he just showed up and he's like, I need to talk to you, talk to the other parties, the other people that had the party, and calm them down. He just was like, yeah, I just need to tell you, this is who I am. These are the people I know. This is it. And we're not here to start any problems. Just letting you know, this is who I am. Problem was done. It was done. And if you are in the right circle, there are, I'm not trying to, it sounds like I'm trying to tell people to get into the mob, right? Or something like that. But it's like,
podcasting is not the mob. It can be if you wanted to. Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, but let me ask you a different question though, because we're kind of spilling the beans on why people should get into the podcast in a very selfish way. But when you look back at the early days of your podcast, what actually got things going for you? Started to move the needle? Was it consistency, better guests, or like better positioning? What really got you going? Because it's hard. It's a slog at first, man.
Yeah. I think there's one particular incident. So, Dan John, most people may not know who he is, but he's a legendary strength coach. Like, he's written a bunch of books. I've read most of them. I had been to his workshops and his seminars. And when I emailed him, like, I was just interviewing friends, people I knew from the industry and, things like that. And I emailed him and I was like, hey, I was like 12 episodes in, maybe less. Email him like, hey, coach, I have a podcast. I'd love it if you came on. And I was like, he's never going to get back to me. And within 10 minutes, he's like, sure thing, man. Here's my cell phone. Give me a call tomorrow. And I was like, whoa. That was like the light. I was like, holy cow. Like, and then Dan John, in my mind, was the stepping stone to like, okay, well, now I can go tell all these other people that I want to get on. I'm like, hey, I've had Dan John on my podcast. Here's a link to it. I'd love to have you on as well. And you start to step up. Mm-hmm. Right, in the level of guest that you have. That was a big eye opening, and I think a lot of people say, "Well, I can't get good guests." And my question is, well, are you asking? Have you actually reached out and asked if they would come on? And most people say no.
Yeah, I got really intimidated when I first started getting in because there are some people that will be like, "What's your, how many subscribers do you have? What's your download?" And then I just was really honest at the beginning, and I was just like, "I'm growing." But, I promise you that I'm going to keep hammering at this. Just that's who I am. And the people were often like, okay, cool. That's good enough for me. And I was just like, oh, wow. I thought there was going to be something a lot more difficult. But they were just like, all right, cool, man. If that's where you're at, that's where you're at. I'm down for conversations. There's a lot of people out there that want to help people too,
Yes. And I think that's a big part of it too. And I've actually rarely been asked what my downloads are. I think, I don't know why. Maybe it's just because the sheer volume of episodes I have out there. People just see the names or they click, or maybe some people probably don't even look. They probably just like, oh, here's the topics. And cool. Yes, I'll do an interview. And, it really is interesting. And I think people just you get in your head. This person's never going to want to talk to me. My podcast is too small. I see it all the time. I'm like, well, just just imagine that you have thousands and tens of thousands of listeners per episode, right? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
stop, get out of your head a little bit. Act as if your podcast is bigger than it is, and or be professional too. So, yeah, that's a big thing, man. It's just ask. Like, how many times as an entrepreneur do you hear no? All the time. Right? That should be a muscle that you should be able to train pretty well, so it's like it doesn't bother you anymore. And that's something else that podcast trains.
Yeah, it does. I actually, when I moved to Vietnam, I married a famous singer, and like my wife is the like original winner of Vietnam Idol, and she's like an absolute rock star. She's awesome. And I remember when we went out to when I met her for the first time, I was just like horribly intimidated, but I was like, well, here goes nothing. Hey, you want to go out to dinner sometime? And our first date was horrible, but I just kept showing up. And like, it was horrible. I spilled a drink all over her, man. It just took her to a horrible location. I thought it was a nice place. It was awful. But, we kept showing up. And when I asked her once, why she said yes. And there's a couple of things. She's like, well, you're funny for one. And I was like, thank God. But the second thing was, she was like, you'd be surprised that when a person becomes famous, the number of people that are asking them out is actually really, really small, because everyone's like super intimidated by who that person is. And like, I think the podcasting, I think with this, it's the same too. Like, people see someone who's super, I could never get Cristiano Ronaldo onto my podcast. Well, figure out the channels and send a request. You might be surprised if you could get someone in. I have no idea how hard it is to book Cristiano Ronaldo, but I've never tried, because that's just, you know what I mean?
How do you do it? If you have someone in particular like that you want on your podcast, maybe it's a bit of a reach. What process would you go through?
I'm a bit relentless. Like, one of the things that I do is I start looking at the people around someone too, and maybe start trying to work my way in. So if I see, if I wanted to get, someone in someone's sphere, I might just say, who's their director of production, and who is this person's this? And I meet them. And the cool thing is, and I'm not trying to use anyone, just trying to get into that person's sphere. And I end up having awesome conversations, because the people that person is attracting are pretty awesome individuals. You know what I mean? So it's like, you might get surprised, because say, I don't know, Mr. Beast, or I don't know, what's his name? The guy, the Diary of the CEO.
Oh yeah. I know. I can see his face.
Yeah, you can see his face, right? He's got really cool people around him. I've talked to some of the people at his company, and I just was blown away by how really cool and really smart these people are, And it's like, so that's one way I do it. And the other way is just like, take a shot. See if you can find them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a goldmine for people that you might not be able to access in other ways. Like, I have such great results with finding people on LinkedIn. And, one of the things too is, like, I was doing people that were a bit of a reach for my daughter's YouTube, Ilani's Little World, because it's a kids content channel. But a little while back, I was just seeing how kids content is really ridiculously hard. I'm not making money on that channel, but I still stand by what we're doing, because it's cool educational content. And I will keep doing that all the way till my daughter gets to college, if she wants to, just because I think that if she can be that kid who's doing the science channel, the science and learning channel, that's a good branding for college, man. And there's scholarships and stuff down the road. But I finally had this realization that, like, well, we're just talking about this stuff, and like, we can make a video about, how to make a rocket, but damn, I don't know anything about making a rocket. But what if we created like a hybrid kids podcast format? We can't do it like this, but what if we make a fun video, and then these people that I can seek these people out, and they can come on my podcast. Now I can ask them cool things, but I get to ask them 5 questions from my daughter. And so it's kind of like a mini kids podcast. We started doing that, and I've had the coolest people, man. I had a NASA rocket scientist. I had all of these other really cool scientists that were like the top of their field. But like, when I messaged them, like, I don't get invited on podcasts that much.
Yeah,
they
don't.
Like,
scientists don't. Yeah,
they don't. And then they're like, dude, I don't get invited on podcasts. And I was like, this is rad though, dude. You got such a. And this guy was like the world expert on bugs, man. He's like, I don't really think I've really done a podcast before. And I was like, damn, but why not? You're like the world expert on insects, man. Like, the dude. And it's just, yeah, man. But you just got to ask.
Well, I think you touched on something that's really. I don't think it's talked about enough, because it's kind of hard to notice, is that you went at it as a way of curiosity, right? Like, well,
Yeah.
I don't know anything, so I want to go learn stuff, and I'm going to go ask experts. And I think what a lot of people get into their podcasting journey, they feel that they have to be the expert, they have to know everything, and
Yep.
you don't. And I think
No.
that what I'm getting at is like it makes you an advocate for your audience because the people listening don't know either. So
No.
if you actually keep it in a way of like, well, I and it's like it's that balance of interview preparation. You don't almost be like too prepared because then you know everything about the topic. You want to be like a little dumb about it. So when you interview the expert, you're asking questions that everybody else is probably thinking, and
That's what I do with.
that's a key part, right? It's
Yep.
like you has to be a little bit curious and kind of humble, and I'm not going to say dumb, but like naive to the topic. And that way, when you get after it, you're asking the same questions that the audience would be thinking. You got to be thinking for them. Like, I wonder what they want to know right now.
100%.
Or am I just up here trying to prove that I know something about a topic,
100%.
right? And that's a really key, subtle, but really valuable part. I mean, I look at one of the best podcasters in the world, Joe Rogan, right? And arguably
Right.
number one. He acts. He doesn't. It's not an act. He just doesn't know a lot of things, and he's not scared to say, I don't know, I have no idea, I'm dumb, I don't know what you're talking about, can you explain that to me like I'm 4 years old, right? And I think that's a very it's a very good way to approach interviewing formats.
I did that with I've got 4 podcasts that I do right now. The Sean Trace Show, which is just about life. I have Growing Money with Sean Trace, which is my financial podcast because I knew nothing about money. And I was trying to right my financial ship. I was dealing with student loans, credit card debts. And I just was like, dude, I need to find out about this stuff. I'm way behind on retirement. I am way behind on all of these different things I want to be doing. So I started talking to financial experts. And I was asking the dumb questions. And like, I love how you ask these questions like an idiot would. And I was like, yes, like an idiot would. Where do you come up with these questions? I was like, just people like me, that don't have any idea. And I was just like, finally, I admitted, I was like, dude, these are my questions. Like, I have no idea. I didn't grow up with a family who talked about this. And I was like, well, if we can have people that are asking the dumb questions, then, you're going to really have people that you can connect with, and my wine podcast is for people who want to know why are all these snobs talking about this stuff? And this podcast, one of the things too, people challenged me on this. They're like, you have a media company and you're going out and interviewing other people that have media companies. Don't you worry that they'll take your... I was like, dude, there are enough clients out there for everyone in the world. And you know what? If I can find out and find someone who's an expert at something, that's rad. I hope that people that watch my channel can find that out. There's a big, big world out there. Be curious. I've got a ton of information, but I don't have all the information. No one does. And if you can meet people, and I think that it's that soft power. And one of the things that I think people forget about, and this is a societal problem right now, is that we have, with short form, everything, fast food, short this, fast this, people have forgotten about playing the long game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the long game is something that you have to think about. Certainly, as a podcaster, what is your goal? To get more views? Well, is it? Or downloads? Or is it to establish connections? Is it your brand building? Is it, my friend, he wanted to start a podcast, and I was like, well, what do you want to do with it? And we started talking, we went all the way through, and we talked and talked and talked. And finally, he said something. He's like, you know what? I don't know, man. I just want to be doing TED Talks. I was like, okay. So you want to do talks? You want to do public speaking? Yeah, man, that's my dream, but I don't know how to get there. And I said, all right, that's your long game. So to start out, you need to start getting reach so people know you. Little Miss Sunshine, I watched the other day, and I love that movie.
Wow, so good.
And the guy's like, I just got the 9 steps or whatever it is. And when he went to try to sell his book, the guy, dude, there's some serious tie-in to Breaking Bad in that movie. I didn't realize. Bryan Cranston plays the guy in Phoenix, and then when he gets pulled over later by the cop, it's the guy who plays his brother-in-law in Breaking Bad. I was just like, that's awesome.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but when he goes and sees Bryan Cranston's character, who he's like, dude, your 9 steps are great, but it's not the 9 steps. Nobody knows you. And I just was like, That's it. And that movie was made before podcasting. I guarantee you, if that movie was made today, that dude would be like, welcome to my podcast. He'd be working it, because it's a great way to build the connection. And then once you do that, you can start doing some talking head. You can start doing your short form. And then you're creating the space where you are, again, teaching and sharing value. And I think that's part of the long game. But you have to figure out what your long game is.
So there's a couple of things that come to mind when you say that. Number one, I was listening to Chris Williamson from Modern Wisdom. He was on the Rogan podcast. It was a really good interview. And they both agreed, like, you don't really have a podcast until you hit 150 episodes.
Yep.
Big number, right? That's a big number. When people ask me about podcasting, I'm like, well, first of all, commit to a minimum 50, probably 100. And then they said 150. I was like, you know what? They're probably right. It probably is 150. And when I was interviewing one of the guys from Mind Pump recently, which is one of my favorite fitness and wellness podcasts, he's like, most people get into podcasting because they want to sell some advertising and they want to get sponsored advertising and they want to sell some t-shirts. And he's like, that's a horrible idea. Like, you want to get into it. We both laughed. I'm like, that's a terrible idea, because if that's your goal, you're going to be sorely disappointed for maybe a year or two or maybe 3. But the first thing you have to go out and do is like, prove that people actually want to listen to you. Like, do that. Like, be entertaining, have some good topics, serve a particular niche, like show that first and then worry about that other stuff later, which is going to take time. Like there's no, unless you're Tom Brady and if Tom Brady does anything right now, he's going to be successful, right? Why? Because he also spent, 20 years winning 7 Super Bowls. So he's put in the work, but like most of us,
we don't have that.
You don't have that. So accept the fact that this is going to take some time. You're going to have to figure some things out. I will never want to go back and listen to my first 20, maybe 50 episodes.
God, no.
Just as I don't feel like I wasn't sharp. I just didn't have my skills down, and I didn't know who I was trying to serve, how I was going to serve them. So I think there's a lot to say in the long game. And it is like, are you familiar with Jerry Seinfeld's like never break the chain?
Yeah.
Quote?
I don't know. I know Jerry Seinfeld, but tell me about Never Break the Chain. I don't know Never Break the Chain.
He wrote a joke every day.
Okay.
Every day he wrote a joke. And he's like, you just can't break the chain. He's like, if I took one day and I didn't write a joke, then the chain breaks. And I think that's something like, it sounds like a grind, but like, that's how you become truly great at something. Like you don't break the chain. And, I've heard people too, like I publish every 5 days other than the holidays, because I don't want to break the chain. Like I know what happens if you stop, you just like, well, I didn't have to publish this week, so maybe I'll take another week.
Another week turns into a summer or 6 months. And I've been there. I've been there, man. Oh, you're preaching to the choir right now.
Yeah. So that's content, you just got to show up. And, I know really good content creators in the space, and they like, one of them jokes, he's like, I got to go. He talks to his wife and he's got to do his Instagram. He's like, hold on. Sorry, honey. I got to go feed the beast here. And he goes off and does his, his clip for the day, but he's feeding the beast, not breaking the chain. You can see like there's the people who are truly good at this and have seen a high level of success. It's consistency. And that's, that there's, I wouldn't even say like someone asked me the other day, like, what do you think? What do you feel makes you a good podcaster? I'm like, I'm just a blunt object, dude. Like, I just don't stop. Like I'm an idiot. Like I will bang my head against the wall continuously. And I don't know why. I just know I like it. And there's no secret. That's me. Like character flaw, maybe. So, that's it.
You and me. My wife posted my calendar the other day. First of all, she looked at my calendar and she was like, what the hell is that? And I was like, that's my
monstrosity.
It's just, what is that? And I was like, that's my calendar for the next month. She's like, she screenshotted it and posted it on her Instagram. And she's like, her first reaction was very much my wife, where am I on this calendar? And I was like, well, you're everywhere else. That's not those colors. You're pretty much everything. And so she's like, yeah, but I want my name on there. And I was like, okay, I'll put your name on there every single day. That everything is not that, it's you. But the idea, she was just joking with me, but what was spot on there is like, this week I had a couple days to Vegas, but then from now all the way to 24th, I'm doing 3 interviews a day. I got 4 different podcasts that I'm working on. I got 3 interviews a day. And then, after January 1st, the first 3 weeks of January, I'm booked up. I'm running 4 podcasts, and there's one that I host for a client, that's a 5th. It's a grind, but I live on it. I thrive on it. I love it, man. And these conversations leave me feeling it's like a net positive, it's just like the needle's moved in my own life. And I think that's what I want to tell people too. Have conversations that are going to make your life better. And so that's one of the things I explored is dude, I am now credit card debt free. I just got some new credit cards that are cards that give me points. I've never had that in my life. I paid down about $12,000 in debt over the last year.
Wow.
And I was able to do that because I was talking to all these people that were teaching me about this stuff. And I was it opened up the doorway. I was like, oh, I can do that too, man. Oh, okay. And then I found a great financial coach who started coaching me on my business and stuff. But it was the conversations that I was having were the ones that were allowing me to kind of open up my mind about what was possible. And it's if you're finding value in that conversation, other people will too.
There's curious to get your thoughts on this.
I love it.
I think there's I call it the magical moment. And it's about 2 to 5 minutes long in a podcast. It's when you stop recording and you sit there and you recap and you're like, hey man, that was really cool. A lot of times in mine, I'm like, hey, you mentioned something in the interview, you need help on this, or you're looking for, this is a challenge. I'm like, hey, I'd like to make an introduction, or maybe I can help. And that point, that's when the relationship to me solidifies in a moment where it's hey, let's not end this at this interview. Let's continue. Let's take a next step.
Yep.
I think you and I should be friends, basically, is what you're saying, right? And I think people I've been on other podcasts where it's there is no debrief. It's just cool, no. Thank you. I'm like, okay, I guess that's it. I guess that's we're done now. But there's a lot to it. And I've learned over years because I generally like the people that I'm interviewing most of the time. Dude, that was awesome. Thank you so much. And the other thing I've learned too, after, nearly 1,000 of these is if I'm not really excited for the interview, if I just look at that interview on my calendar that day, I'm like, ugh, I'm going to have to struggle through this one. Maybe I shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
Truthfully. But here's the thing. I'll also say a lot of times I start it, I'm like, that was really fun. I did not see that coming. So I don't know. There's a lot of relationship nuance that happens. And of course, if you're doing it in person, that's ideal, but most of the time it's just not feasible.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed in tying back into what you said about that, a great conversation, time kind of just drifts away. And you look down, you got your questions there, the conversation goes, and you look up and 45 minutes is gone. And when I get into that flow state in the conversation, I have had conversations that it is like pulling teeth. I have had a couple of them that are how do you think about that? It's good. Okay, what would you like to talk about? Anything. You're oh man. But most of the time, and I do notice that when I have a great conversation, there's this mic drop moment, and I'll look at my guest and I'm like, that's it. That was it. That was the moment. I know as the editor that's going to be seeing this, I know that's the moment where I'm going to just be the music comes in, we're wrapping everything up. There's this organic, organic magic to it of sorts. And it is I tell people, I sit down with someone, and not everyone, but I sit down with people as strangers and we leave as friends. And I think that so much of the time, you get these organic, interactions with people that you couldn't get in any other way. But let me ask you this. You've interviewed 1,000 guests so far. How has being a podcaster changed your network and the way you engage with people and, opportunities over time?
Monstrously. It's 9 years ago, outside of, my little CrossFit community, I knew no one in this industry. And, I live in my little corner of Montana, in a town of 9,000 people and, close to the Canadian border. And I just pump out content, man. I record and then, a couple times a year, I'll go to an industry conference, right? And I'll go to the Health and Fitness Association's conference, or Connected Health and Fitness, or Athletech Innovation Summit, or one of these. And I go, and people know me. I'm like, what? And I tell my wife, I'm like, honey, it's really fucking weird. Like, people know who I am. Like, people recognize me. They like second guess when they look at me. And that's okay. That actually weirds me out. But what I really like is that fact that I'm walking down the hallway. I'm like, hey, I interviewed you. Great to meet you in person, right? And then all of a sudden, like, this network effect starts happening. And I think without me even knowing it or being aware of it, I do believe that people look at me as one of the most network person people in the industry overall. And that's weird sometimes. Like, it just happened slowly but quickly over time. And that's all, I think obviously it's the people I've met, but I always lead with value. And I think that's one of the keys with when you offer someone an interview, like I don't want anything in return. All I want to do is I want to talk about you. I want to give you a platform, create some content for you, use it whatever you want. It's going to be out there forever. Right. That's it. That's all I want. And I think that nowadays too, and this is like a mechanism, a vessel to lead with value, if that makes sense. Because most people don't do that anymore. They immediately like, they want something. They talk to you like, I know what I want. I want something from this guy. I generally, all I want is I want your ideas, right? I want your input. That's it. And I think that's something that is hard to identify, but over these 9 years now, it's something I realize is still very powerful. One of my favorite books is The Go-Giver by Bob Burg. I love if anyone's ever read that. But it's fantastic. It's just all about that. It's like, how do you start with value? How do you lead with value? And just believing that it's going to come back to you in some karmic way, right?
Right.
And I don't know. I guess it's kind of working.
I started my podcast when I was younger. I got really sick. I was living in LA. I got a viral heart infection after catching the swine flu, and it kicked my butt. I recovered. I got better. It was not fun, but I got better. And but I was so sick that I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to make it. And then I got better and life changed, and I had a daughter. And yet I always had this worry of like, man, what happens if you're not around? And like, my parents are getting older, and now I am having I wish I could have conversations with their younger versions of them that was like my age now. And suddenly when I started the podcasting, I was like, what if I have conversations that maybe someday my daughter can sit there and listen to these and go, oh, so that's who my dad was. That's what he stood for. That's what he believed. That was what he was all about. And, maybe some of it she's going to think is kind of cringe, but maybe some of it she's going to think is, kind of awesome. And I love the idea of putting it out there, because everyone has a voice that is powerful and as an opinion that, can be, maybe you're not always right, but maybe you've got something to say that people can tap into, So can I ask you one last question?
Please.
If someone's diving into this in 2025, 2026, we're almost, what would you tell them to focus on in their first 90 days? How would you tell them to really get going?
Get going. And what I mean by that is, like, people get hung up on so many things when they want to start a podcast. They're like, well, the artwork, even the title, right? What's the format? I'm like, well, get a couple things down. Maybe create a title, but you can change the title if you want. Not a big deal. It's not hard. Just get started. Like, literally start recording. You don't even have to publish the episodes, but start, because you're going to find a million reasons to wait until you hit record. And hitting record is the key to everything, right? You can argue, well, publishing is the key to everything. Yes, but you can't publish unless you hit record. Yep. And so I think just get started. Maybe have a loose framework of like, hey, what's the mission and the goal of the podcast? And what I mean by that is, like, for me, it was once it came clear that, like, I literally stole the Gretzky quote, is I want to help the industry skate to where the puck is going. That's it. Like, I want to, I want to be on the cutting edge. I want to inform people. These are the things you need to be aware of. Let's navigate this together. Help me. I'll try to push forward for everybody. And that was always the goal. And I knew who I wanted to serve. I knew the audience, the type of person that I wanted listening to my podcast, and I recorded for them. I literally recorded for, at first it was like, I remember it was some other gym owners that I knew. I'm like, I'm going to record this podcast for them. And as I kind of changed and morphed over time, like, no, I want to record this for the F45, the CEO of F45, or the guy who invested in F45. Like, that's where I want to be. So I'm always advocating for a particular avatar. And that's it. So if people are like, have an idea of like which direction you're going, who you're serving, what you want the audience to be, get a couple topics on paper or get a couple people lined up and just start recording and figure it all else. Because you may record your first 4 episodes and during something, you're having a conversation with Sean. Sean says something like, that's it. That's the title. You just nailed it. Right? Like, oh my God. Or that's the tagline, whatever it is. Like, you just nailed it. And I think you just got to start the journey. So that's it. Yeah, dude. Like, it's not hard. Like, get Riverside for $30 a month, right? You don't even need a nice microphone.
No.
Most laptops have good enough stuff, right? To record everything. So just start and then you can figure it all out as you go. And it's like entrepreneurship, man. You jump off the cliff and you build the plane on the way down. And I don't think it's any different here.
That's the mic drop moment, man. Where can people find more information about you, brother?
Yeah. A couple places. LinkedIn's probably the best. You can go there. I'm there all the time. It's Eric Malzone. I don't think there's many other ones, but also Future of Fitness is my core podcast. It's futureoffitness.co. And then on our podcast placement and strategic partnership work, we do podcastcollective.io.